After all these weeks, I can't believe we're here and we've made it, but Pat Kilby, it's time to start talking about the seniors, and today we kick it off with none other than Mr. Justin McKoy.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Wednesday, August 10th, 2022. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and joining me, as he does every Wednesday, is none other than the man, Coach Pat Kilby, and we want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or your first watch every single day. Please don't forget that the show is free and available anywhere you get podcasts, so please, it's real easy. Go ahead and subscribe, smash that like button, and leave some comments as we talk about Mr. Justin McKoy today. Pat Kilby, can you believe, man, we are on number 11 of these 13 player profiles. Unbelievable that we've made it this far.
Yeah, it really is. It really is, man. These episodes are flying by.
They are. I can't believe it. So we've got, if you're keeping track with us, we've got Justin McKoy today, Armando Bacot next week, and then we round off the whole thing with none other than the hashtag Leaky Lockdown. If you haven't seen all the rest of the episodes, I'm going to tag the playlist right here where I'm pointing if you're watching, and you can go back and listen to all of those or watch them if you so prefer. So, Mr. Coach Pat Kilby, I know we got you late on a Tuesday night and you got school starting tomorrow, first time the kids are back, so kudos to you for hanging in there on a late night. Let's talk Justin McKoy. Dive into it.
Yeah, so Justin, he's going to be a senior for us this year. This will be his second year within the program after he's transferred to Carolina from Virginia. Small forward, power forward, kind of goes both ways. I would say he's probably a lot more of a 3 than a 4, but did play some 4 for us just because of depth issues last year. 6'8", 220 pounds, so he's got good length, good height, good muscle tone to him. He's a good looking kid.
Yeah,
repping the deuces for the Tar Heels, 22, and yeah, that's right. Deuces. Twitter handle. Go hit this man up on social media at Justin T. McKoy, and it's MCKOY. Right. And then Instagram handle is Justin McKoy 4.
Love that. Man, I wonder what the T stands for. That'd be a fun guessing game. Hey, if you're listening or watching, drop us a little line. Tell us what you think the T stands for. Justin T. McKoy. And so in his career at Virginia, in his 2 years there, he had played in a total of 33 games. And the stats, the numbers, were a little bit better than they were at Carolina. We'll look at that. But first, Pat, can you unpack a little bit of what he did last year for the Tar Heels?
Yeah, so last year he played in 30 of the 39 total games. 209 total minutes, which is about 7 minutes per game. Season high of 18 against Georgia Tech, so that was his most minutes in a game. 1 point per game, so 30 total points.
Great math,
right? 42 total rebounds, 1.4 per game, 14 assists, 13 turnovers, 3 blocks, and 3 steals, which is interesting. I kind of thought those would be higher.
I would have too. Yeah, before we did our research for talking about Justin, I was surprised by those numbers.
Yeah, and look, it's probably on me. I stereotyped him a little bit. Like, you're coming from Virginia, you're probably a good defender, right? So at least, and not to say that he's not. I just thought those would be higher.
Yeah, I wonder if it might be an issue of opportunity. I'm curious to see. I mean, we'll talk about it more. Not that he'll necessarily get a ton more opportunity this year, but you wonder where that comes from. Is it a small sample size? What's going on there? Sure.
Yeah. So plus minus negative 45, and that goes back to what you were just talking about. Opportunity and who is he in the game with, and when is he in the game?
Yep.
Field goal 8 for 36, which is 22.2%. 3 for 12 from the 3-point line, 25%. And then this was really impressive. Small sample size, 15 free throws. But he hit 12 of them, and that's an 80% clip. So,
yeah,
do some more of that for us, Justin.
Yeah, and so here was the interesting thing to me. I was seeing all those numbers, and I was like, man, that field goal percentage is low. The 3-point field goal percentage is high, but like you said, in the small sample size of free throws, that's up there, 80%. So I looked back. I went ahead and pulled up his 2 years at Virginia, and let me give you those numbers, Pack. So
Okay.
again, 22% shooting at North Carolina. In his 2 years at Virginia, he averaged 46.5% from the floor on field goals. Again, 3-point shooting, 23.1. His 2 years of Virginia averaged 33.3%, which is making one out of every three. And then, that 80% free throw percentage is great. And it dipped just a little bit in his 2 years at Virginia with 75%. And so I think those numbers are probably a much better indication and representation of what he actually is as a shooter.
For sure. Yeah. And that free throw is still pretty good. So
yes. So, oh man, we'll take 75%. Carolina as a team last year shot, and I've got this on my head because yesterday's show was Carolina's free throw percentage from last year was 74.6% as a team. So he's like right on it if he can stick at that level. Love it.
Yep.
And so here, before we go into our first ad read, I think the big thing I want to say about Justin is this. It's easy for us, Pack, in these shows as we're looking ahead to want to give guys more minutes, more points than they probably actually will get. Not more than they will deserve, but just there's only a finite number of minutes in a college basketball game. Some people might not realize. No, I'm just kidding. That's just a fact, right, of basketball. There are only 200 minutes available. 5 players on the court at a time for 40 total minutes is 200. And so while Justin might be capable of playing 10 to 15 minutes a game, it's just probably not likely, unfortunately for him. We're going to talk about what a great guy he is, and you would love to see him get those minutes. And so you hear it and see it in the numbers we've just talked about, right? Let's not make this something it's not. Barring some major glow up and blow up, McKoy is just going to be a bit player on this team. Do you think that's a fair assessment for me, or have I needlessly slandered his character?
No. I think that's a great assessment, and to be honest with you, I agree with you. But and we'll get more into this. I think though he is just a bit player, he's a very important piece, and I'll explain why a little bit. But he's a very important piece.
That is a great teaser, my friend. I love that. And what a great way to segue us into talking about Bet Online, which is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. There's also reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they've got you covered. So head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, Pac, I want to move to next talking about Justin's kind of a review of last year. Obviously, his third year in college, but is really his first year for Carolina. I don't really remember seeing him at Virginia. I know he was there. Yeah. I couldn't have pointed him out, right? Yeah. But him being on your team, you know who he is for some of the reasons you're about to talk about. So would you give us, let's start with strengths that Justin possesses.
Yeah, so Justin, first and foremost is a great teammate. That's evident. Not only from the, we can see it. When we watch the game, he's one of the guys that's the most hype on the bench. He's cheering on his teammates. He's waving his shooting top around like he's invested in the game. And those are the things you want to see. And the reason why I say it's so important from him is because, he's not getting to play a lot, but he's still a great teammate. And that shows his true character to me. And so, that stuff right there is invaluable.
It's taking a page right out of the Theo Pinson playbook.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
No, not from his Carolina career, obviously. Theo was like doing it. I'm just meaning now in his NBA career. That's kind of the role that Theo plays. Anyway, keep going.
Yes. So, Justin's also very selfless. He's a glue guy. And what I mean by that is he's He's a great teammate, and he's a great practice player. He's making his teammates better through practice, and that's part of the reason why he's so important. He's got great length, and he's got strength. He's got a good build. Obviously his game and his skill development, all that stuff is still fluid, but he's got pieces and kind of some intangibles that you can't really coach or teach. He's got good, height and length and strength. And so he does have some things going well for him. Good basketball IQ. And so, I think those are what I would call his strengths.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's some of those things that you remember the movie Rudy, about the Rudy that played Notre Dame football, and one of the coaches told him at some point, "I wish God would put whatever he said, like your guts into my players' bodies," and it's kind of that same thing, like all those intangibles. I just kept thinking that about Justin. Now I feel like Justin is infinitely more talented as a basketball player than Rudy was as a football player, but I kept thinking about that, like, man, if all those intangibles you just said were in all the players of, and I'm not saying about a bunch of Carolina players, because that's not who Hubert Davis is going to allow to be on his team, but there's so many prima donnas and so many guys that are entitled and want to get theirs. And if they could all just have this temperament that Justin does, very much let me play for those words on the front of my chest instead of the name on the back.
Yeah. And, You nailed it on the head. In today's culture, the culture of basketball has shifted, and you see it a lot in the NBA where they just want to collect so much talent and so much ability. There's not enough shots to go around. There's not enough minutes to go around. It's just not possible. It's not feasible. It's not healthy for your team or your culture. And so, you need guys like Justin because, yes, he's a good basketball player. He is, but he's not going to pout. He's not going to be a cancer to your team when things aren't going his way. And that is so critical for anyone, but especially for guys that you need in practice every day to make your team better. And so, he has that, and that to me makes him valuable.
100%. And Tony Bennett would not recruit him if he was not that guy, and Hubert Davis would not recruit him if he was not that guy. So that is two glowing endorsements from two of the nicest coaches in all of college basketball. And so I'm right with you on all that. The only other strength that I would like to add is one of the things I noticed about him in the limited minutes he played is just felt like he had really good hands. He seems soft, even though he's got this length and he's got a good build. His fluid, his body moves well. It's just, as we'll talk about, and forgive me, I'll go ahead and this will be a segue into weaknesses. He's just not really an explosive athlete, and so that's where it limits him in those regards. So then, Pac, let that move us into talking about weaknesses. What do you see in Justin's game that's not allowing him to be on the court as much?
Yeah, so I'll start defensively. The first thing that stands out, he's not got a lot of lateral quickness, and that's kind of what you talked about with athleticism. I expected that, I guess, and so maybe my expectations were too high, but I kind of thought he was going to come in and be, basically a little lesser version of Leaky, and someone that Leaky,
absolutely.
And, it didn't turn out that way. He's just not as quick as I thought. But that's something he can get with Jonas Serration, and those are things that can be improved. You can get faster, you can get stronger, you can get more explosive, and so. Let me ask
you that as a coach, when you have a player on your team who's got everything between the ears, right? Knows where they need to be, the spots to be in, how to play help defense, anything you want as a coach, they've got from the knowledge standpoint, but are just a step or two behind, if I can put it that way, or just not able to keep up at that same athletic level. What do you do to spur them on or to allow them to see the court more?
Yeah, so and we'll talk a little bit more about this whenever I'm Coach Davis, but you've got to find a niche. And so what can you offer to the team that can allow you to be on the floor and be trusted by your coach and your teammates? And so that's usually a talk we have. And, sometimes players are a step or two slow because they're thinking too much. They're not just playing. And then sometimes they're a step or two slow because they don't have that ability, but they can bring other things to the table. And so whatever that is that you can bring to the table, you got to find that and you got to bring it
Yep.
consistently. And so, like, I'll use this as an example. Justin, as we saw from the stats, he's a good free throw shooter. So when he's in the game, can he guard and can he find ways to get to the free throw line? If he can do those two things consistently, well, hey, Coach Davis is going to, he's going to gain his trust. He's going to gain the trust of his teammates. And you know what? Baylor, we could have had him on the floor down the stretch. He could have been in there hitting free throws. So that's just an example off the top of my head what conversations they're probably having. If you want on the court, this is what you need to do.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's go ahead and move to our Coach Davis conversation. So every week when we do these, we conduct our pretend end of season interview where I'm the player and Pac is Coach Davis telling me 3 things I need to work on in the off season. So I am Justin McKoy, going to Coach Davis's office. Hey, Coach Davis, ready for my end of season interview. What can I be working on this off season? Give me 3 things.
All right, Justin. Well, first of all, we've got to find a niche, which is what I was just talking about. And, I alluded to defense. I alluded to free throws. But one thing that I think can improve is rebounding. We talked about just the natural skill set that he has with his height and his length. And so you got to be able to rebound the basketball better at a higher clip. And so that's something that could be a niche that could, where Justin could work his way on the floor. Quickness and explosiveness. This is something, get with Jonas Serration and really get in there and come stronger and faster. And those quick twitch muscles, we're working those and just where you can be more explosive and you can be trusted to guard, multiple positions and things of that nature. And then lastly, the fundamentals of the game. There's times where Justin has the basketball and honestly, I'm nervous. And I wish that, he could become a better ball handler and even more consistent in his shot and become trusted with the basketball.
Yeah, I'm with you with that shot thing. I mean, I feel like we heard, hey, heading into last season, Coach Davis went out and he got these 3 bigs that can all shoot. Brady Manek, Dawson Garcia, and Justin McKoy. Garcia, in the time he was playing for Carolina, showed that. Brady got off to a slower start than he wanted, but boy howdy did he have a blow up throughout the season. But Justin just never found his way to that, despite being like, hey, this dude can shoot, whether it's mid-range or stepping out behind the line. And looking back at those Virginia numbers like we did, it should be there. And so, man, I'm really hoping, like whether it's confidence or getting out of his thinking and just playing like you were talking about, or more comfort in the Carolina Hubert Davis system, whatever it is, just put the ball in the bucket, man. Like, right?
That's it. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Well, that's good. Okay. Anything else on those off-season things you want to see from him?
No, honestly, no. I just, if
Okay.
he can improve in the fundamentals of the game and, become more explosive, then that's a huge step in the right direction right there.
Bingo. Love it. So then, let's now move ahead and look at this year. When we think about expected role for Justin, and based on all the things we're saying, I think the writing's kind of on the wall, unfortunately. But let's talk about our role that we expect Justin to play.
Yeah. So to me, Justin's just behind the 8 ball. I mean, it is what it is. I love the kid to death, but you look at the depth of the roster, it's like, where does he fit in? Because obviously Leaky's going to be starting at the 3, and Puff and Trezzy are going to be right there for those relief minutes, and Pete Nance and Bacot pretty much secure that 4 or 5 spot. And then to be honest with you, Jalen Washington is probably the next in line to get any of those minutes. And look, here's why I say that, and I'll just be honest with you, and this is from a coach's perspective.
Okay.
If Jalen Washington and Justin McKoy are even, Jalen Washington's going to get the nod. Now,
why is that?
I say that because Jalen Washington's going to be around for the next 4 years, like in all likelihood, or 3 years, whereas Justin is on his way out. And look, that sounds harsh, and I get that, but the reality of it is, if you've got a chance to gain experience with a kid that's going to be staying in your program moving forward,
Yeah.
and that,
And a focal point in 23-24.
yeah, absolutely, he's going to be a key piece to what we do. He's going to get the nod, and so, to be honest with you, I'm just going to be honest here. I think Jalen is better now,
Yeah.
but if they were at the very least even, Jalen's going to get that nod, so that eats those minutes up, and I mean, that's just a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and Pac, here's where I'll say it was funny actually. Earlier today was hearing from somebody very inside with the program, who was saying, listen, it's gonna be a bit with Jalen because of they're working him in slowly with his injuries, but that he looks legit, can shoot like crazy. And so I have spent the day very sad for Justin McKoy because I know we're talking about him tonight, but very excited about Jalen. Just hearing that news of like, dude, Jalen, just be ready is what it sounds like. Now, again, patience. I think in November, December, we're probably seeing Jalen playing 7 to 8 minutes a game. But you look up, middle to end of the ACC schedule, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him getting 15 to 20 a game. Because if he can be, I wouldn't be surprised to see him be first off the bench in the front court rotation. Just depending on just how quickly he acclimates. That's what it sounds like. But like you're saying, that just moves Justin back one more spot on the bus.
Yeah, absolutely. And
unfortunately,
it is. It's an unfortunate thing, but from what I understand and from kind of what I've been told, Justin, he didn't come to Carolina with the expectation that he was going to play more at North Carolina than he was at Virginia.
Okay,
he came to Carolina with that expectation that he grew up in Carolina. He was a Tar Heels fan. His father was a Tar Heels fan, and so that was just something that was kind of cool for him, and that opportunity was too much to pass up on. Now, I'm not saying that he's came out and said that. That's just what I've kind of picked up on and what I've been told. And so, just from my perspective, there, I'm thinking that he's somebody that's he's happy to be a Tar Heel, and he's going to do whatever it takes for the team to succeed, which is what we talk about. Just a high character young man.
Absolutely. Well, then it's a great time to then talk about his floor and ceiling. What do you see? I mean, I think we've already said Justin's floor, right? Is doing well in practice, gets 5 to 7 minutes here or there. And so I guess we don't really need to relitigate that, but let's look at what could be a ceiling for him.
Sure. Yeah. So what I see the ceiling as is probably being that 9th guy on the roster, just to be honest with you, is coming in at number 9. And, there's no way he's going to be above Seth, Puff, or Trezzy. So
no.
To me, it's that 9th spot and playing, a role of 10 to 12 minutes, to me, that's what I see as the ceiling.
Yep. And that's just what, I'm right with you, because I think at that point if he could bump up from 10th to 9th, that means that he's beaten out Jalen and Tyler Nickel. And I think that is probably the ceiling for him, is doing that. It sounds like with Tyler, I think his defense just isn't where it needs to be yet. If I can put it kindly that way, that he can and will score in bunches. But so I think McKoy will be ahead of Nickel probably on the depth chart, but I think if he wants to be 9th, he's got to beat out Jalen. Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I'm right with you. And so, that's his ceiling. He's not going to go out and have a 20-point game at any point. It's just being there, being steady. What about, one of the things, and I know we'll talk about this next week when we talk about Armando, and then obviously when we get to Leaky, he's doing it right now, is playing that 5th COVID year. Do you see Justin McKoy doing that, going for that, especially knowing that now that 5th year counts against the 13 scholarship limit?
Yeah, that's tough. I'm going to say yes, I do see it. And here's why. There's a chance of losing Armando, which I know doesn't play the 5, but just hear me out here. We're for sure losing Leaky. There's a chance of losing Armando. We're definitely losing Pete Nance, who's in his 5th year.
Yep.
So there's roles to be filled.
Yeah.
He has some veteranness that he will bring to the table.
100%.
And look, it's another year, probably towards a master's degree, free education. I think we can all agree Justin's not going to go play professional basketball, but golly, we know what an education can do. And not only that, but he does have some NIL stuff like Salvio's Pizza, I know, is a NIL deal with him. And so, he can make some more money. He can get that master's degree or work towards it and play another year at the best university in the country. So I don't see why he wouldn't, to be honest with you. And that's why I lean towards yes.
That makes a ton of sense to me. That's a great explanation, Pac. And boy, what an asset he would just be as a veteran leader in that locker room. I'm right with you. And I think if the scholarship math makes sense and it's there, why wouldn't you want to have him as part of your team? And like you said, there might be, depending on transfer portal stuff, there might be more of a niche and a role for him that 5th year. And so that could be really interesting. So, because of what he's going to do, playing time or lack thereof, there's not really much of a bold prediction to make, but I'll give it this. I'll say he's not going to have anything sustained like back-to-back double-digit games, but here would be just the cool scenario for me is a single game where maybe there's foul trouble or, God forbid, an injury or something, or and he's able to come in, play a few more minutes, and winds up scoring 10 to 15 and grabbing 6 or 7 boards. And maybe it's just like a Puff Johnson type thing that just kind of leads Carolina sort of under the radar to a big victory. Like, I could see that being like a big, bold moment for him that would be a highlight on the season.
I hope you're spot on.
How cool would that be to look back and say, man, Justin McKoy, that performance got Carolina through the second round of the NCAA tournament when it looks like they might otherwise have lost. Just something cool like that would be.
Yeah, that would be
super
cool.
neat.
And it would be very deserving.
Yeah, absolutely. His teammates would mob him if that happened. So that'd be great. Yeah, and so, let's put that exclamation point on it. Not only does he do that, but he makes the game-winning shot to boot. That's not going to happen, but whatever. Anyway, Pac, any final thoughts? And what are you most excited for this year looking ahead to Justin McKoy?
Yeah, so first of all, I have a good relationship with Brady Manek, and Brady talks about just how good of a guy, Justin is. And so I'm excited that he's a part of our program. I'm excited that he's a leader. He's a veteran. He's got experience. He brings that to the table. Experience from Tony Bennett, experience from Hubert Davis, and experience of going to the Final Four and competing in the national championship. Like, those are things that go a long ways, whether he plays a role or not. And so not a role, but whether he plays significant minutes or not is a better way to put that, because he does have a role and it's an important one. And that's why his veteranness matters and why I'm excited that he's a Tar Heel.
Well said, sir. Well said. Yeah, I think the biggest compliment I can give him at the end of the day is this is somebody Dean Smith would have loved to have on his team, because he's a young man that's turning into a kind of man that you want to churn out of your program. And that's awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
That's good. Justin McKoy, we wish you the best this upcoming season. May your minutes be plentiful and your threes rain from on high. That is it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Coming up tomorrow, Jason Jordan from Sports Illustrated is joining me, and we're going to talk about Simeon Wilcher's Peach Jam performance and what an absolute baller he was down in the Augusta area. Next week, Pat Kilby and I, we're wrapping up the seniors, well, the normal seniors anyway, talking about the man Armando Bacot. We want to thank you for joining us today on the show. Please, if you would, subscribe, smash the like button, and leave some great comments. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow Pac at Coach_K23, and you can follow me at Isaac Shade. Get more on the ACC by making Locked On ACC your second listen today. Host Candace Cooper and the local experts of Locked On take you around the conference in 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Thank you so much for joining us on Hump Day. It's so great to have talked about Justin McKoy. What a great guy, great dude. And Coach Kilby and I, we want to remind you that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Until tomorrow, peace.